Good day to you. This is your weather report from Estes Park, the Estes Nonprofit Network. My name is Karen, and I am the Outreach Director at the network. We are here to talk today about competitive grant funding. This is just one of the many ways that nonprofits are securing funds. Just to make sure we are clarifying what we are and are not talking about. Competitive meaning nonprofits have to apply, put together a proposal, a reason why they deserve the funds. What we are not talking about, fundraising events, of which there are many, individual donations, peer-to-peer fundraising, such as prom court or crowns for the care that happen locally, fundraising circles, such as 100 Women Who Care, or social enterprises that an organization sets up for their own benefit, such as the Library Friends and Foundation setting up the Cliffhanger bookstore. These would be funds that anybody can apply for or not. That's one of the questions that we would like to address. One of our strategic pillars is to tell the story of nonprofits and the philanthropic community of the Estes Valley. So, the two questions that we would like to address here, this story, is how are the competitive grants awarded in Estes funded? Are we generating our own funds in Estes to fund our nonprofits in competitive grants? Secondly, what organizations are actually eligible to apply for these? There are 70 plus nonprofits in Estes, and we are going to take a look at the competitive grant funders who are consistently awarding in Estes. They either have a short history, but we know they're going to happen again, or they have a long history and we know that they're hoping that they will continue to award in Estes. So, combined, the awards given out in 2023 or last fiscal year, but primarily 2023, is what we are looking at in terms of awards. The amount that this group awarded was 1.1 million. This is the breakdown of information that's been provided by these organizations. Estes Valley Sunrise Rotary Club, the Colorado DOLA Infrastructure Grant. A couple of notes here as we go down. The Community Foundation, this is the total they have available. They actually awarded $80,000+ last year. So the amount they have available and the amount they award, you'll see that comes in again with another one. 6E lodging tax. I just want to share some things that I'm understanding about the 6E lodging tax, which is slated to be $5 million a year. The town retains 12% of the revenue and transfers 88% of it to the Estes Park Housing Authority for housing initiatives. So the lodging tax was passed to cover housing and childcare. So roughly 4.75 million in 2023 went directly to the housing authority. What we're talking about here is the remaining money that is available for, in this case, specifically childcare granting. So that is about closer to 600,000. These grants were administered late in the year. They started late in the year. This was a new program. So anything not awarded will then be reflected in 2024. So one of the original questions, right, is where does the money come from that is given out in Estes? So here we're going to break down each one of those slides and see if they come from outside Estes. They're coming from Down Valley. Estes Park has nothing to do with the funds or the fundraising within Estes. Within Estes, I asked that we break down specifically to tourism and see how much of a role that's playing. So the first one, we'll take Sunrise Rotary Club. Donates locally to itself, the members do. So that's that pink color there. They have 3 events in the fall. So assume many of the consumers of those are guests. We attribute that to the green to tourism. Colorado DOLA federal grants or infrastructure grant. Those are federal funds, all outside Estes. The United Way of Larimer County, they do collect donations from a mailer. This was just sent out last month For Estes United, those donations go into a designated fund that comes right back into Estes. The other outside Estes, the blue part of that is really representing the remainder of the amount they invested in Estes, which is coming primarily from corporate gifts and grants that they secure on their own and pass on into the community here in Estes. Community foundation. These are individuals in Estes that hold investments at the foundation. They don't have to be in Estes, but they hold investments that are designated to benefit Estes. The interest does. And so the funds here, these are not to be confused with donor advised funds. So in 2023, there was another $312,000 that was invested directly into Estes nonprofits by investors who advise where they want their donations to go. So there's no competitive grant application for those. What we're talking about here is the pool of money that's created by those who wish that their money, their interest on their investments be awarded through a competitive grant process. Next is Village Thrift Shop. So generally, this is the community donating household items. Locals are volunteering to sort and resell the items. A small portion is attributed to the guests who do come into the shop to purchase items. 6E lodging tax, entirely tourism, all paid for by guests staying at hotels and lodges. Town of Estes Park. This one was interesting to figure out. So all of the funds that we're talking about here, there's two programs that are included in this line: base funding and community initiative grants. They're both funded by what's called the general fund in the town's budget. So how do we know how much of the general fund is local versus tourist related? 73% of credit card purchases in this town are associated with an area code outside of 80517. So we're going to attribute almost 3/4 of the town's grants funds that are sitting in this general fund to tourism. So that 73%, that's everybody who's going to a restaurant, paying for parking, paying some kind of tax that ends up in our general fund. So this is where the money is coming from that funds the competitive grants. If we ladder all of this information up into a cute little pie, we can see here that Estes overwhelmingly does fund itself. 85% is going to be tourism and direct within Estes. You might argue, or one might argue, that tourism is not from Estes, but this town has always been defined by tourism. It makes sense that almost half of the funds going into these grants are thus generated. I certainly witness tourists taking advantage of nonprofit services just as I do locals. Outside Estes, 15%. Estes Park is actually not an island of its own, so it is nice to see that there is money coming up from Larimer County agencies, considering that we are part also of the county. I'm going to go back to the in Estes and the tourism question here. This is potentially an area of opportunity. Another strategic pillar of the network is growing visitor contributions to all nonprofits. So this is something that we'll look at later, maybe bridge this gap of the fact that tourism is funding 47% of these competitive grants, but 73% of our tax revenue is attributed to tourism. All right, so next questions. So the first question, are we funding ourselves? Generally, yes, we are funding ourselves. Next question is, what organizations are actually eligible for these grants? So Sunrise Rotary, this is open. Anybody can apply. Colorado DOLA is open. It only goes to one nonprofit. They receive 100% of the $100,000 it was last year for technology, infrastructure, and strategic planning. The United Way of Larimer County, one of their pillars to benefit that is represented in who they award to is primarily childcare. This halos out to after-school care and reading, literacy, reading tutors, so to speak, and financial literacy is another one of their pillars. Community foundation. This eligibility has shifted. I'm going to spend just a minute here on this. In 2023, this was open. So anybody could apply for up to a grant for $15,000. This year, it is, they've taken the pool of money they have. We're going to say it's roughly $100,000. Half of it is going into impact grants. Or I'm sorry, they're called intersection grants. They're higher impact grants for 1 to 3 organizations. And then smaller community grants, those awards are $2,500 to $5,000. The nonprofits who are eligible, they must operate in 2 areas that the Community Foundation identified through their intersections report. The first one is sheltering and caring. This means affordable housing, aging populations, healthcare, and childcare. Second area is the connecting intersection. This is social connectivity and belonging, mental health. So that's if you're going to apply for the larger grants, those impact grants. If you are applying for a community grant, the ones that are $2,500 to $5,000, you must operate in those same concentration areas in addition to food security, music, and the arts. Okay. Next, Village Thrift Shop. Anybody can apply. 6E lodging tax. This is the money that is strictly available for childcare. Town of Estes Park. So this line of money that they award, $332,000 of it is base funding. That is available to 9 organizations that have pre-qualified, so to speak, that the town feels strongly are resolving things that they may not have the capacity to resolve. The rest of it, $30,000, anybody can apply for that. Those are the community initiative grants. So that part, the $30,000 is open. So right now, the only 2 organizations that keep their grants open to all missions are Sunrise Rotary and Village Thrift Shop. However, keep in mind too, those grants are project-based. So you are writing in a grant saying, I will do X. They do not cover overhead or our general operating, whereas some of these others do. So what does this tell us? One of the takeaways here that I am perceiving is that if federal and local funders are supporting the same issues, it's not that they're not important, but you end up with a decent amount of nonprofits whose missions don't fit those content areas, and you have a growing island of ineligible misfits. There's always a popular topic. There's an immediate need. During COVID, so much funding was reactive and it was immediate community needs. A couple of years ago, everything was DEI. Today, there's a huge focus on childcare and housing. So this is just one observation that we're seeing in terms of what grants are out there to apply for and who can actually apply for them. In Estes, most organizations have less than 10 employees. We know that. Based on 990s, I would venture to guess that most of them are less than 5. They are seeking local and regional funders. They have the capacity to manage smaller grants. They don't have their own auditing system. They don't have a staff member dedicated to a state's reporting requirements that would need to come back. So just one thing to think about. One thing, when you cross over how grants are funded and who's eligible, tourism is clearly an important part of local funding, but it does benefit a limited number of nonprofits if we look at where those tourism dollars are going in terms of what grants they're going to. We do have, keep in mind, 4.5 million guests in Estes and 11,000 locals. So tourism should certainly play a role here. What about all the other dollars? Okay, when we at the Nonprofit Network look at the income being reported on 990s in 2023, we're finding $72 million. 1.1 million of 72 million is hardly anything. So let's break that down just a little bit. YMCA of the Rockies accounts for $33 million of this money of the 72, and Harmony Foundation, located in Estes Park, is 12 million. That's still $27 million of income. Rocky Mountain Conservancy, we shave a little bit more off. Rocky Mountain Conservancy and Eagle Rock School both report about a $6 million budget of income. So that leaves 15 million for 70 plus nonprofits. So that's a lot of, like I said, a lot of nonprofits sitting on the island here in Estes, looking for opportunities with a huge variety of missions. It's also telling us that local competitive grants cannot sustain the local nonprofit services. This reinforces the importance of individual donations. Huge. Large foundations, state, federal grants. Please donate. Please appreciate that some taxes are actually earmarked for nonprofit work. Acknowledge that foundations are reinvesting in Estes and businesses tirelessly are supporting the nonprofits in Estes. So one thing at the network that we've been working on, we started a program last year to revisit the idea that there might be an opportunity still in tourism, and that one of our pillars is growing visitor contributions to the benefit of all nonprofits. This program is not a competitive grant. It does address the opportunity presented by tourism. 2024 is the second year any 501c3 can register. There's currently 42 nonprofits that are benefiting from the program. Last year, we raised $11,000 through the program. By the end of June, so far, we've raised $10,000. So we're excited to see where this program goes. And we're excited about any other sort of creative funding opportunities here in Estes. This weather report has been super exciting for us to look into and get the data on and crunch some numbers. And if you have any questions about it, please email us at info@epnonprofit.org. Happy to dig further or clarify anything that's been on here. If you know of other sources for competitive funding that we're not including or you think should be included, please let us know that too. The next weather report, will be an economic impact study of the nonprofit industry in the Estes Valley. So we are going to dig into that $72 million number, the value of services provided by nonprofits. Nonprofit industry in Estes Park is the largest employer. So what is the employment impact from nonprofits? That should be done by the end of the year. In the future, then, what we're looking for is to turn that information and the work that the nonprofits are doing with us collaboratively to have some thoughtful work on an industry-wide strategic plan. This hopefully then can influence some community-wide decisions that we make alongside our friends in government, tourism, and business. So please let us go forth and do good, and thanks for listening. Woo!